President, please be seated. The trial chamber is in session, and the floor is given now to Defense Counsel for Nguyen Chia to continue his examination for the witness.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, Mr. Witness, one more session with me, and then all day tomorrow with my colleague from the Khieu Samphan team. Before I turn to my next subject, let me follow up the observation from the prosecution in relation to my question regarding prisoners coming from the popular masses. It is indeed correct that the term comes from the co-investigating judges. However, the question is in E3/5772, you have explained that S21 received only prisoners from within the party, not from the popular masses. It seems that the judges are referring to something that the witness himself has said, but I cannot reproduce now when it was that he used that term. Mr. Witness, let me now talk about a subject which we find very important, and that is the role of Vietnam. In one of your statements at E3/451, English ERN 00204341, Khmer 00187652, and French 0018671, you said that the major task of S21 was searching for traitors, finding poison, arms, and Vietnamese agents. You remember saying that, and is that still your evidence?
Witness, thank you. Mr. President, may I request a document from the Council? President, Council, could you please provide the witness with your document with a highlighted portion so that it takes quick time for him to follow?
I'd be happy to do that, but it's coming from his own testimony.
Mr. President, can I ask counsel to repeat the English year end because I'm looking at that page that was cited and I don't see that quote.
I said 002-04341. So,
President, Counsel, could you provide the witness with the document, because it is a concern by the witness because the quote seems not identical to the statement on the document.
Yes, I'll provide that part of evidence that he provided himself to him, no problem. So may I request my team, Khmer page 00187-652. But to keep moving, I'm happy also to ask it in general terms. Mr. Witness, what was the task of S-21 when it came to Vietnam?
Witness. Thank you, counsel. The tasks of S-21 defined by Office 870 was to counter spy. So it is the counter any espionage. Any spies should be monitored and report to the ANCAR, and the report must be very clear. So the main task of S-21 was to conduct activity to counter espionage regarding any spy from Vietnamese or from Vietnam or US or any other country.
Meanwhile, I traced your Khmer answer. Can you have a look at that document, E3/451, Mr. Witness? So are you now prepared to answer that question?
Witness, thank you. I responded in principle. The task of S-21 is to counter espionage. It was not fighting by weapon, but through its tasks and obligation to seek for traders, poison, weapons, and Vietnamese spy.
Mr. Witness, in your testimony, you've talked quite a bit about Vietnam's leadership at the time. Maybe a side note for the translators. Mr. President, the witness in his testimony will be referring to Le Yun, L-E, and then Y-U-N, but that's spelled in English and French as Le Duan, Le and then D-U-A-N. So whenever I refer to Le Duan, I believe the witness speaks about Le Yun. Mr. Witness, what do you remember about Le Duan, the leader of the Socialist Republic of Vietnam?
Witness. Le Yun was the General Secretary of the Center Party of Vietnam. It was originally called Labour Party of Vietnam, and Le Yun was the Secretary General of the party.
Do you remember seeing him once with your own eyes in Phnom Penh?
Witness, thank you, counsel. Mr. President, at the time I was just arrived in Phnom Penh and I was allowed to stay at the railway station in Phnom Penh, and Pol Pot came to receive Legion with the jeep vehicle. So there were Pol Pot, Legion, and others in a cadres. So I saw him from a distance.
You also saw a very important military Vietnamese person, Vo Nguyen Giap, spelled VONGUYENGIAP.
Witness, thank you, counsel, and your honors. Yo Nguyen Giap. No, I didn't see him. I didn't see him personally, but I heard from my wife. She told me that he went to the orange plantation during the visit together with Legion. He was the general who won the war at Dien Bien Phu against the French army. His name Nguyen Giap. So he have just died recently.
What can you tell us, if anything at all, about the relation between Pol Pot and Le Duan?
Witness. I would like to refer to the events, and it was in 1973. Legion met Pol Pot and convinced him to negotiate with the U.S. So I heard that if Vietnam could convince Cambodia to negotiate with the Vietnams, Cambodia would be given $200 million. And based on a presentation, and Son Sen said that Chu and Lai thought that it would be a good idea to negotiate, and based on Brother Won's statement, it is the party line. It is based on our discretion. If we would like to do so, we can negotiate. And later, Legion sent a telegram to Pol Pot indicating that matter, but the telegram was not yet shown to Pol Pot, and it was shown to him until he finished his meal. And there was a long discussion, and finally Prince Norodom Sihanouk was invited to visit the liberated zone in Cambodia, and at the end Cambodia did not negotiate, but Vietnam did negotiate with the other party. And later in 1974, I may confuse with the year, but it more likely to be in 1974. Legion would like to to take all Vietnamese from Cambodia to return to Vietnam for the vote. And then Pol Pot was so quick to say yes to the proposal. So the Vietnamese troops and other officers were authorized to leave. And after most or all of the Vietnamese troops and other people left, and then Lê Duẩn feel that he was not so smart, that he lost the trick to Pol Pot. So this is based on my statement to the tribunal during my case. And later I heard from Pang, who told me that Pol Pot and Lê Duẩn make a controversial statement to one another. And Pang told me that Pol Pot, who started the rhetoric statement against Lê Duẩn. And then a dessert was prepared from the palm juice and the palm seed. So Lê Duẩn make a criticism on this dessert that no one used this kind of fruit as a dessert. But when the owner became the leader, so the sugar palm fruit become a good dessert. So even though Cambodia is a poor country, but we carve the rice paddy. It means we built so many rice paddy dike for irrigation.
I've read many of that indeed in your evidence before, but my question is, what is the source of your knowledge that Vietnamese people were sent before 1975 to Vietnam at the request of Lê Duẩn? Is it something you read? Is it something you heard? Is it something that you were somehow involved in?
Witness, thank you. In 1974, I was in Lang. There was one office of the Vietnamese officers, and it was headed by an expert from the zone of Vietnam, Vu Tịch Cam. His name was Vu Tịch Cam. So the office closed in 1974. And I heard that Lê Duẩn was surprised when all the Vietnamese troops and other civilians returned to Cambodia, because he realized that he lost a trick to Pol Pot. So I didn't see any existence of Vietnamese office at Lang anymore.
Mr. Witness, at one point in your evidence, English ERN 00209176, Khmer 00186122, French and will follow, and the E3 number will follow right now. That's E3/5772. You said that the war between DK and Vietnam was officially declared on the 31st of December 1977. And then you say, and I quote, "I would prefer we only speak of war crimes from that date." why did you say that? What made you say that you prefer to speak of war crimes only as of 31st December 1977?
Witness. Thank you, Counsel. Mr. President, may I have a document from Counsel, a written document which he referred to the content that he put question to me? President, Counsel, could you provide the witness with the document so that he can refer to quite well before he responds to your question? So it is part of our practice in these proceedings. So it might be a difference or a problem happening with the oral quoting, and the written document is given to the witness. It's more better.
Again, I'm happy to do it, as I did this morning with Hoare, but I'm not sure if it is a practice that the witness should read back exactly what he has said. I think he is an exception to the rule, but having said that, let me provide him with the actual quote. Khmer 001861-202. Well, Mr. Witness, why you prefer to speak only of war crimes as of 31st December 77?
Witness. Thank you, Counsel. Mr. President, the declaration of wars was known to me during DK regime, but I forget the date. And during the hearing, the proceedings, it was covering war crimes. It was likely that the co-investigating judge who said that the war crimes should be the facts after the declaration of the war. Yan Chanda also said that sometimes the DK attack and advance into Vietnamese territory, and sometimes the Vietnamese troop push back into Cambodian territory. And I'm not quite sure. It might be during the hearing, during the trial chamber proceedings. At that time, I was defended by my defense counsel. So the war was declared on the 31st of December 1977.
Mr. Witness, you are again mixing post-79 knowledge that you acquired mostly during your trial with your knowledge at the time. So my question is, do you know back then whether there was an armed conflict between DK and Vietnam before the 31st of December 1977?
witness. Thank you. I think my answers earlier seem to be very clear. And before this date, there was the fighting or the military incursion, and based on the testimony of Nayan Chanda, you heard that both parties fighting against each other. But DK declared its force against Vietnam on the 31st December 1977. So I heard of the fightings before this date. And Vietnamese civilians came into Cambodia to collect firewoods and so on. So I wrote on a document, and later there was a fighting between the parties, and the meeting was held on the 15th of May, that the Vietnamese troop fought in, and there was a proposal for negotiation, and it was a kind of fighting. It was rather a large fighting, and the center party meeting and decided on that matter, and he mentioned that the most important is the internal force. If the internal force allow the external enemy to enter, it might happen. The fighting can be easily fought by the outside enemies. So it is clear there were fightings between the party before the declaration of war, and both parties arrested the prisoner of wars, and they extract confession and broadcast on the radios in the same or similar manner.
In answering questions from the OCIJ in your own case, your written answers, E3/15, if you want, you can read them back. English 00251381, Khmer 002340079. You write, Mr. Witness, that Ho Chi Minh and Le Duan claimed that they had been the fathers of the Indochina Federation for a long time. Here you have the document. And why is it that you wrote that?
President's court officer, please receive document from counsel and hand it over to the witness.
So, Mr. Witness, why did you write that Ho Chi Minh and Le Duan claimed that they had been the fathers of the Indochina Federation for a long time? How did you know that? Who informed you of this? Is it your personal knowledge, or is it something you read?
Witness. Thank you, counsel. The Indochina Communist Party was created in 1930 in Guangdong, China. There was a discussion about the name of the party, and finally it was named as Indochina Communist Party. So there was only one Indochina Communist Party. There will be only one army and one government. And the former resistance in the movement, especially Uncle Ho. And in this document, I give an example in 1954. It is the meeting in Geneva to finish the war in Indochina. So when the general of the Vietnamese, Yo Van Nhiep, won the war, and Prince Norodom Sihanouk declared its independence in 1953. And then the Geneva Convention decided that the movement should stop to have its armed force, its movement, and then a number of Cambodian were sent to study in Vietnam, including Pan Sawan, and they need to naturalize their citizenship from Cambodian to Vietnamese. Counsel, please hold on. Let me finish my testimony.
If I had all the time in the world, I would be happy to have you finish your testimony, but I don't have that much time. I know everything about the history, but my question to you is, what did you know? Let me rephrase my question. What did you know about Vietnam's ambitions between 75 and 79 in relation to Cambodia? What was Le Duan's foreign policy ambition when it came to democratic Cambodia? Is it something you knew? Is it something that you heard about?
I have made a mention about the rhetoric statement of Pol Pot toward Le Duan in the case of palm sugar sweet. And counsel interrupted me when I made mention about the last statement. Pol Pot made mention that Le Duan had a big ambition, and if Le Duan could not convince Pol Pot, the coup d'etat would be conducted against Pol Pot, or forces would come to attack Pol Pot. That was made mention by Pol Pot. And it was said that the statement was made by Pham Van Dong. Nayan Vanda came to certify here, and Pol Pot told me in the study session. And it was said that the statement made by Pol Pot had something to do with Pham Van Dong.
Let me see if I can persuade you to answer by showing you a document of which there's only a Khmer version. I will give it to you momentarily. It's document E3/9836A. So it has an A behind it. It's Khmer ERN 01202363. With your leave, I will show that to the witness, Mr. President. This document was shown to you, Mr. Witness, in a recent interview you had with Investigator Thomas, as you call him. It was in your interview in case 3 and 4. Please have a look at that document. It is a confession. I'm not allowed to ask you questions about the confession, but I am allowed to ask you a question about the annotation that you see on the left upper side. Can you read the annotation, Mr. Witness?
First, Mr. President, I would like to read the annotation under the order of Council. 14.12.78. Contemptible A knew through the medic coup d'etat plan from inside. That happened because the inside allowed that to happen.
I've been told that in Khmer, but if I'm wrong, then please correct me. It says inside coup d'etat plan, let the Yun enter from outside. Is that what it says, or is that difficult to read?
Mr. President, thank you, Council, for clarification. Who told you? Who told you the Khmer? Could you tell me?
He's sitting over there, behind me. So I have to rely on him. But does it say that second point inside coup d'etat plan, let the Yun enter from outside? Does it say that, or it doesn't say that?
President, please hold on, Mr. Witness. Thank you, Mr. President. He wanted me to read the annotation. Then he said that he was told in Khmer the Yuan enter from the outside because the inside allowed that to happen. So is it the official statement from somebody? Who told you? President, Council, the witness already read the annotation in Khmer. Is there something wrong in the reading of Khmer? He has already read the annotation. Do not make mention that you learned the Khmer from others.
I was answering his question, but I will refrain from doing that, Mr. President. Is it your annotation? Is it your handwriting?
There was something strange when I worked with Thomas, and I can still recall that. If I look briefly, the handwriting seems to belong to me. And it was written as I have already read, and the annotation that I made here was sent to whom? When I look at the handwriting for a brief moment, it appears to be mine. And the date here is 14.12.78. Or here refers to have already read. And I have never written the abbreviation or in Khmer. It was Nguyen who usually wrote that. An annotation that I made was to be sent to my superior, and I am suspected. It is suspicious to me after reading the annotation here.
The annotation itself is not terribly important to me. What is important to us, Mr. Witness, is the content of that annotation, and it allows me to go to an excerpt from a book from an American academic. You've been referring earlier 2 or 3 times already to a journalist called Nayan Chanda, who testified in your trial. I would like to read an excerpt from another academic's book, and just so that you can follow, I have a Khmer translation of the relevant excerpts, and with your leave, Mr. President, I would like to hand the witness the excerpts that I would like to discuss with him. For the parties and the chamber, it is document E3/7340. There's no French translation. I'll be referring to Khmer pages 01113861, English 01113861. It is a book from an American academic called William J. Duiker, D-U-I-K-E-R. It's published by the University of California in Berkeley. It's called China and Vietnam, The Roots of Conflict. Mr. Witness, let me read to you what I have highlighted for you, and then I will ask your reaction. It's a bit of a long excerpt, but I've given the translators a copy in Khmer so they can read along. If Hanoi hoped to prevent China from stabilizing its position in Phnom Penh, it must act soon. An open invasion by Vietnamese troops would be the most decisive solution, but it could cause serious international repercussions and possibly provoke a direct confrontation with China. A general uprising led by anti-Pol Pot rebels in Cambodia and supported discreetly by the Socialist Republic of Vietnam was less risky and certainly less costly, but success would be less certain. In the end, the plenum decided to proceed with plans to provoke an internal uprising led by So Pim, while keeping in reserve an alternative plan to topple the Phnom Penh regime through direct intervention. A bit further, at the February plenum, February 78 that is, the Vietnamese party leadership had approved a proposal to remove the Pol Pot regime by an internal uprising. The key to the success of this strategy lay in the emergency of a resistance movement strong enough to challenge the Pol Pot regime for power. But in May, Pol Pot's forces attacked rebel headquarters, and So Pim was captured and executed.
Do we happen to have the basis, the sources for this chapter, upon which this chapter is based, or this quote is based?
Can I at least finish my citation, and then I will answer you. A few lines down, Mr. Witness, he says, in midsummer, the Vietnamese Communist Party Central Committee convened its 5th plenum in Hanoi, with plans for a general uprising thwarted by the death of So Pim and growing indications of Chinese involvement in the Cambodia crisis. The party leadership approved a new plan to launch an outright invasion of Cambodia to overthrow the Pol Pot regime. Rebel forces in Cambodia would take part in the attack and provide a cloak of legitimacy for the operation. But the brunt of the attack would be borne by Vietnamese regular forces. End of quote.
I stand with my question. What are the sources, if any, for this?
Interesting question. Not often asked when other academic publications are cited, I might add.
Can you please answer the question?
It's a very well-respected academic scholar. Actually, Nayan Chanda is saying the same thing.
I was asking if sources are provided. This is a completely neutral question.
Are you referring to the sources that Dijker is using, or are you referring to the actual article, because that, or the book, because that you have admitted into evidence?
Even if something is admitted, it doesn't mean that you can't ask for sources. This is exactly what I'm doing.
In his book, he refers in his footnote 20, page 78, to a document that you know already as well. That's the Geng Biao report, the report of the Military Commission, the Standing Committee of the Chinese Communist Party. The actual quotes that I just read to are without a direct source. However, as I said, the court's expert in case 1 also spoke about a February 1978 plenum of the Central Committee. I'm happy to look that up for you, indicating that it was a decision of the Vietnamese Communist Party to start an internal uprising, and if that didn't succeed, Vietnam would invade. Now, Mr. Witness, having that annotation in the back of your head, and having heard what this academic expert has written in his book. Is that something that you remember at the time, having heard these Vietnamese plans?
President, you may proceed. Deputy Co-Prosecutor.
My only objection to the question is that the witness be asked if he has information other than obtained through confessions from S21. The annotation itself that was cited by counsel appears likely to just be a summary of what was in the confession. Certainly fair for it to be asked, but I think that the witness should be clear that he's being asked. He can't. It's not proper for him to respond with information he obtained from confessions.
The excerpt that I read from Duiker is from a book. Duiker is a well-renowned expert on Vietnam, and he hasn't read any confessions. He just simply tells what he thinks he knows about a February plenum decision of the Vietnamese Communist Party. So my question, Mr. Witness, I'm not referring to any confessions. Is it something that you heard, that decision of Vietnam?
I believe
President, please hold on. Judge Fan, you may proceed.
I believe there's a misunderstanding. If I understood the prosecutor correct, he wasn't alleging necessarily that the quotes you put forward were based on confessions, but he asked the chamber to reiterate to the witness that any answer he gives should not be based on confessions. So what you have learned from confessions cannot be used in this court. I think we have clarified that.
Mr. President, counsel wanted me to read document 012-02-363, and the question was asked whether or not I recognized the annotation, and I replied the annotation was suspicious. Then he said that he learned the annotation in Khmer from another individual at the back. Before I answer the question, I asked the court, I would like to inform the court that I reject this document. I have an objection to the document 012-02-363. Now, concerning the third document, as for its content, I think it is consistent with the facts at the time. The meeting was held among the political bureau of Communist Party of Vietnam and Communist Party of China, and it's beyond my knowledge. However, the statement in the book is consistent with the true situation at the time.
And how do you know that? Have you heard any information other than coming from interrogation that could confirm this? Did DK have spies within the Central Committee of the Vietnamese Communist Party, for instance, or have you heard that they knew this some other way?
concerning the third document, it is about the plenum. And the quotes you mentioned are consistent with the statements of Nayan Chanda, and the quotes are consistent with the statement by Pol Pot as well. In the study session number 1, Pol Pot has to be convinced, and number 2, if convinced, if that was not successful, coup d'état plot would have to happen, and if no coup d'état attempt, then the forces would invade Cambodia. I at first did not agree to the statement. However, later on, Naya Janda testified before the chamber about that fact, and I started to recognize that the situation was like that, and the quotes you mentioned are consistent with the true situation happening in Cambodia back then.
At one point, Mr. Witness, you were shown an excerpt from the notebook that belonged either to Pon or Tui, document E3/834, English ERN page 001844988, Khmer 000774776. I have the document here if you want to have a look at it. In this document, the smashing of Sao Pim's network is described as being equal to the 17 April 1975 victory. In the notebook one can read, it is the great leap of victory over Apim and the Yun. Is that something you said during education sessions, that the victory over Sao Pim's networks and the Vietnamese was just as important as the 17 April 75 victory?
President, Court Officer, please take a document from counsel and provide it to the witness.
So, Mr. Witness, why was the victory over Sao Pim and the Vietnamese in June 78 equal to the victory of 17 April 75? Why did you call it the Great Leap victory over Apim and the Yun?
Mr. President, I have never seen this particular document. From the investigation stage up to the proceeding against me in case 001, and up to now, I haven't seen it up to now, and this document was said to belong to Tui. This document may reflect the speeches I made during the time that Num had been arrested and smashed. And Pham had linked to the Vietnamese force. He was the bigger person, and Nhâm was another individual who had links to Vietnamese forces. That was my understanding at the time. Later on, I learned that people rebelled at the east, and some cadres fled to Vietnam. So the content of the document may reflect my opinion back then.
My very last question, because it's already past 4. Why did you compare it with the Great Leap victory of 17 April 75? Why was it that important to call it the Great Leap victory over Sao Pim and the Vietnamese?
I would like to tell the court, based on my political opinion back then, we won a victory over Lon Nol in 1975. Lon Nol was considered the U.S. puppet within the CPK, and the people who had involved in politics thought that way. And forces of Nhâm and Pham belong to People's Revolutionary Party of Cambodia. So Pham and Nhâm were arrested. They were the high apparatus of that party, and that was the political opinion, my political opinion back then, but not now. Judge Lavenge, you may proceed, said the President.
Oui, Monsieur le Président.
Mr. President, I would like to backtrack a little. When my colleague George Fens asked Counsel Copé to provide some specifications regarding the sources of the book he read out, she asked him what were the sources of what he was quoting in light of decisions taken by the plenum in Vietnam. He referred to a footnote number 20. However, when you read that footnote, we find that this has absolutely nothing to do with what was read out. Footnote number 20 is the report of Genghero, and it refers to military acts of China in democratic Cambodia. I don't know whether this is intentional.
I hear you say it, Judge Lefevre. Thank you.
President, before the adjournment, the Chamber would like to ask the two defense team about the time that you are going to use. So how much time the defense team for Nguyen Chia will you use for questioning the witness, and what about the defense team for Mr. Khieu Samphan? So how much time you will be using during the testimony of the witness, so that the Chamber can have a proper coordination of the matter?
Oui, Monsieur le Président,
Mr. President, I would like to take the floor because I will be the person examining the witness tomorrow, as you had pointed out to my colleague. When he started his examination, we had decided that the 4 days allotted to defense would be split between us, and it would be 2 days, and I will have at least a day, and it would depend on how my examination of the witness will proceed. And then Mr. Kope will take the floor to complete examining the witness in the time allotted to the defense. So we'll use the 4 days with less by 45 minutes. So we are adding the 45 minutes used by the chamber at the beginning of Mr. Kope's examination. So I will be the one examining the witness tomorrow after my colleague Mr. Kope's examination today.
President. So now it's clear for all of us. I heard Kope spoke to the witness Kang Il that he would have 1 day to ask Kang Il alias Deutsch together with the defense team for Khieu Samphan. But now it is clear for all of us. It is now time for the adjournment. The hearing will be resumed tomorrow on Wednesday, 22nd of June 2016 at 9 a.m. Tomorrow, the chamber will continue hearing the testimony of Kang Il alias Deutsch. Please be informed and please be on time. Thank you, Mr. Kang Il alias Deutsch. The hearing of your testimony as a witness has not come to an end yet. You are therefore invited to come and testify once again tomorrow. Security personnel are instructed to bring Khieu Samphan and Nguyen Jie and Kang Il back to the detention facility of the ECCC and have them return into the courtroom at before 9 a.m. That is for the accused. And Kang Il, please bring him into the courtroom at 9 a.m. in the morning.